So today is the 26th of April, and this meeting is of the Board of Water Commissioners. And our primary agenda item for this meeting today is the continuation of discussion on the rate analysis and developing recommendations for any changes to the rate structure, rates and fee structure for the water system. And I know Kurt did a great deal of work on this, which I really appreciate. And I was just going through the schedule. So I would turn it over to you and ask you where you want to start on this. Kurt.
Sure. Yeah, no, what I thought I'd do is, I'm sure everybody got a chance to kind of, read through this, but kind of wanted to go, I can go through the analysis. What I did was I kind of took what Michaela had started before and tried to update it for the communities that were part of her original spreadsheet to look at two things. One was the connection fee, and then obviously the other part were rates. And connection fees, both connection fees and rates are pretty much all over the place. And it's hard to figure out what different communities are actually trying to accomplish. Obviously, at the end of the day, the rate schedule is designed to collect whatever kind of revenue the water board needs to collect to continue to operate. And again, different communities have a different mix of, how much the community itself is paying toward debt service versus how much they may be paying toward the rates. And obviously, we're one of the smallest communities in terms of the number of subscribers. So we have a particularly acute problem when it comes to the capital structure and revenue generated from the rate structure. Having said that, what I think we've talked about a little bit last time was this particular rate structure that was put together, the new proposed rates for Wellfleet, reduced the borrowing from the town or the transfer from the town by about $50,000. And it's also designed to collect enough revenue that as we acquire new customers going forward, we should begin to significantly reduce the amount of funding that's coming from the town to cover the deficit for the operating budget. So having said that as background, what I can do is kind of go through each of these communities and kind of look first at the connection fee. Truro obviously doesn't have a water system, so there's nothing. Many of the communities, so Sandwich, for example, has a $1,500 flat fee. So they don't charge by how far the connection is. They don't charge the customer doesn't pay anything for additional trenching for the connection at the meter. They don't pay a meter fee. They basically pay $1,500 and that gets them water service.
Can I ask one thing, Kurt? Does everybody have this schedule in front of them?
I'm confused. What I'm looking at, I don't see anything for Sandwich.
Do you have an Excel document? The third line would be Sandwich.
There's a Truro is blank all the way across, and this one is, in landscape.
Yep.
I think it's the one you're talking. Yeah.
It's a spreadsheet, and at the top of it, it says the first column is town, the second column is bill frequency. The third column is
this one
connection
says
fee.
Connection fee. I don't see bill frequency on this.
Are you looking at a graph or a spreadsheet?
A spreadsheet.
But a chart or an actual document?
It looks like, it looks like it would be from some sort of document, but it's got no.
Kurt, you want to share the screen, Kurt?
Yeah, why don't I do that?
Hold on. Go ahead. All right, you're all set.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, I thought this was what you were talking about. It has some of the
Oh.
information, but not everything that you're talking about.
Yeah, one of the, what I sent was this, hopefully you can see the screen now, and it's got town bill frequency connection fee, estimated connection cost. Can you see that now?
I'm trying to look at what I've got here.
It would be
Look
on the,
at The yellow
my-
column.
yes. So is my screen sharing now?
Yes.
Okay,
No, I can't see anything. I have something weird. It's not what I had before.
on the screen?
Yeah,
Okay, and yeah, if it's weird, it's not a graph, it's the actual data. So can you see my cursor in the yellow column, column C, where sandwich is?
yes, I can see that now.
Okay,
Yeah.
terrific. So basically what Sandwich does is they've got a $1,500 flat fee. And the interesting thing is the DPW does the installation. So it's not a contract to a private contractor to do the install. The town actually handles that. And they just charge a customer $1,500 and they're connected to water. So that's the total cost to the customer to connect. Mashpee is similar, but they charge basically $900 to install. And again, the DPW does it, flat fee. They also charge something which is called a 650 development fee. And the development fee, I think, goes toward the capital cost of the system, near as I can gather, Jim.
Okay.
I've seen development fees in other towns, but it seems like they're trying to separate, what goes toward the cost of the installation versus what's going to go toward debt repayment, or a contribution toward debt. So that's Mashpee. And then coming down to Yarmouth, the DPW in Yarmouth charges $150 for the install. Plus they bill the customer for what the actual costs are.
So let me ask her, do you know when they say installation, what that means?
Yes, it's everything, the meter, the trenching, the connection to the service main.
So
Everything-
if they've got a service, if they have a curb stop that is quite distant from the house, I mean, that $150 covers the.
No, the 150 is sort of like an administrative fee on top of the actual cost. So basically they just bill the customer signs a document that says you'll be responsible for all of the costs to connect from the curb stop into the house. So they do that really at whatever it costs the DPW to do it, but they hand the customer a bill
Okay, got it.
in addition to the $150.
Right.
So on top of, so the total cost, you see this $2,150. When the DPW was doing installs, what it seemed like around different communities was that an average cost to install a service was around $2,000 when the DPW was doing it and billing the customer. When private contractors are doing it, it looks like it's around $3,000. So there's a little bit of, seems like the DPW is doing it, at internal town rates, tends to be about $1,000 less than a private contractor would charge. Just from the data that I was able to gather. And obviously, if the connection is a further distance, it's going to be more expensive. If it's shorter, less expensive. So these are just ballpark
Right.
average type connection costs. They're not meant to be specific, but very general and very average, but trying to be consistent from town to town as to what the relative differences would be. So then you have Dennis is the same thing, and it's the DPW cost to the meter. So they don't tack anything on, but they just literally charge whatever it is. So in the case of Dennis, you know, on average, DPWs would be charging about $2,000 for that particular connection. In Chatham, they tack on $800, but they have you bid out or contract out to a private contractor. So in the case of Chatham, with the 800 and a slightly higher private contractor cost, your cost to connect to town water would probably be more in the range of like 3,800. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
So in the case of Eastham, they don't charge anything. It's again, a free meter, free connection. All you've got to do is contract with a private contractor. So in Eastham, the guesstimate would be, it'd be about $3,000 to connect.
Getting it from the curb stop to the house.
Yeah, the 3,000 is just the private contractor's cost to trench and lay the pipe and make up the connections.
Right.
In the case of Brewster, they charge a flat fee also. It's $1,335. You want water, it's $1,335. In Wellfleet, we're doing the 6,000 plus the cost of a private contractor. I don't know if the 6,000, Jim, do we include a meter?
Yes, that's
Yes.
included.
Okay, so the meter and the valve are included. So that would be about $9,000 then in Wellfleet, with the private contractor charging a typical $3,000, you know, on top of our $6,000 fee. In Falmouth, they also are flat fee at $575. However, what they do is they do it a little bit different. If there's, you know, they charge $15 per foot over 60 feet. So your 575 includes the first 60 feet. If you have a 1-inch or larger line, they have additional costs. So it'd be more expensive if you're connecting anything bigger than a 5/8 or a 3/4 connection. They just have different fees for it. But for a 5/8 or a 3/4 connection, which is pretty typical, it would be $575 all in.
Yep.
In Orleans, they do it at just, you pay what it costs the DPW to do the connection. So that would be estimated at about $2,000. Barnstable does, they do a $2,130 system development fee. So it's kind of like some of the other communities where they get a contribution to capital or to debt service, I guess. And on top of that, then they charge the DPW cost to make the connection. So in Barnstable, it's going to cost you about $4,130 to connect. Provincetown is a flat fee of $2,100 plus $375 for a street crossing, and this is up to 1 inch. So if you're greater than a 1-inch line, they've got an increasing schedule of fees to connect to the Provincetown water system. Tisbury, and for what it's worth, they have a $300 development fee, and then the DPW does the install. So about $2,300 would be a typical cost to connect in Tisbury. So that's kind of what I was able to tease out from all these communities, and believe me, it's very difficult. It's in the weeds to try to find all this and put it all together, because every town does it slightly differently. So then if you're looking at, let me see if I have. Well, I think I can pull it up here. So this is the graph of estimated connection costs. Can you see that okay, the chart?
Yes,
Partly.
Um,
Oh, okay, I moved it. Wait a minute, I centered it. Yeah, okay.
So that's kind of the graph that you may have been looking at earlier, Katri, for the estimated connection costs. So as you can see, Wellfleet's kind of an outlier at our
Well,
$9,000 fee, and the vast majority of them are coming in somewhere between about $1,500 and $2,500. You know, sort of the middle. You know, I would say the average of all the communities.
so
mhm.
Kurt, to be clear, the price that, or the cost that's reflected for for the other towns includes their, whatever their fee is, I want to say like a base connection fee, plus the installation provided by either the town or by a private contractor.
Right. And as I mentioned, as I was kind of going through it, some communities don't charge anything as a base install cost. They just do a flat fee. It's all in. The cost of, you know, whatever it is, the DPW bears the cost of it, and the customer is capped at a specific amount of money. So each of those final total installation costs includes whatever the town's charging, all in. And so these are the all-in final prices for each community that you're looking at on this chart.
So make some decision pretty obvious.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And, you know, we've talked about reducing, well, not, maybe even not calling it a connection fee. What did they call it? A development cost or?
Well, so we kind of have to take what we've been thinking about and set it aside for a second.
Right,
What they do is the development fee is kind of like their equivalent of our $6,000 connection fee.
right.
And some communities have one and most communities don't. And the ones that do have a development fee, it's typically, you know, you saw it, it was as high as $2,130 and as little as like $50 or something like that. And then on top of that, there's the actual physical cost to trench, put the meter in, make the connections. And some communities do that at a flat fee, or they do it at whatever it costs the DPW to do it, and they bill it out, or they have a private contractor do it, and you know, and that's at the homeowner's expense. You know, both expense and you know, they have to arrange it. The town has nothing at that point. The town has nothing to do with it. You go get a private contractor and you get it done.
So like where you've got, say, for the town of, say, like Chatham here, do they use private contractors? I don't recall.
Yes. Yep, Chatham's a private contractor town. That's
So,
why.
I mean, that 3,000 that's on there doesn't necessarily reflect the true cost of the private contractor's costs if they're quite distant from the curb stop, correct?
Correct. This is just an average, you know, you can think of it as probably like an average, you know, 60-foot roughly type connection.
Right. Okay.
Can I
And
ask? Okay. Excuse me. Can I ask a question? Is the DPW of Wellfleet, would they be able to be involved in doing any of this work?
Not
Well,
at this point. They can't. They don't have the people to do it right now.
Okay.
But that's interesting, Katri, that you asked that, because I was on the phone earlier this afternoon with Ryan Curley, and he wanted to know whether or not we would consider using the DPW if they had the resources, if we would consider using the DPW to do the installation. And I said, well, I think we would. I mean, it's just that they have to be, one, trained, they'd have to be licensed to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not right now.
Yes, there's one, I think Jay Norton has a operator's license.
Do you really think Jay Norton's gonna go out there and do the work?
No. I'm just saying,
That's a good one.
he knows what's involved, I'm saying.
Okay.
Oh, that was good.
He might be able to hire the right people, is what you're suggesting.
Right. He has
They don't
one
have the
person
money.
who's interested in doing this.
Uh-huh.
One thing, I mean, and this kind of goes to, it's sort of a philosophical issue. It appears that if the DPW is doing the installs, it's typically costing customers a little less than private sector firms. But if we were to, for example, start using or want to try to resource the DPW to do this, our local contractors would be adversely impacted. And there are a number of them who are currently doing this type of work, doing water and sewer connections. So, we would be taking some business away from them.
Right. Well, so before we move on to other things other than connection fees, I'd like to just get a sense of what others feel in terms of, what should we do? What should we be doing with our $6,000 connection fee here?
Well, I think one of the things it does, it deters people from joining.
The other,
Um,
the
go
other
ahead.
thing, I think the other thing to think about here too is that with the proposed rate structure, where the town would be undertaking all of the debt service, there's really no advantage to the water system, to the system operation, really to charge any connection fee at all, because the debt service is being covered by the town, and anything else we tack on to the connection fee just discourages customers from connecting.
Well, what you're saying is that's if the voters approve the fact that they're going to take on the debt service rather than utilize the connection fees to pay down the debt service.
Yeah, but that's where we're very vulnerable, because clearly that's not happening.
Yeah, it's a real barrier to people connecting.
Well, because I just want to be clear with people that what we heard from Doug Gardner was that we cannot use connection fees to offset operating expenses. And, but we could use such connection fees to fund debt service. Am I correct, Kurt?
Yes, that's what he said. It can only go toward debt service.
Okay.
And that,
So I think we have to be prepared that not everyone may agree with the idea of the town picking up the full debt service when we have outstanding connection fees.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is, this is just so obvious looking at and what we're discussing here.
Yeah.
That-
I'd like to see it, personally, I'd like to see that fee, whatever we call it, but for lack of better, connection fee, I would like to see that substantially reduced. Kurt, here's a question. In terms of the other towns, who has the highest kind of pure connection fee? Whatever they call it.
Barnstable. Barnstable has a 21. Let me just go back here. Barnstable has a I got to move my people around. Where were they? Yeah, so Barnstable charges a 2130. So they're the next highest people charging anything as far as like a system, as far as a what we consider a connection fee. So that 2130 would be the equivalent of our 6,000.
And what was Chatham's?
Chatham's is 900. Chatham is up here and there, I'm sorry, 800. So their connection fee is 800, and then the private contractor would be charging typically around 3,000. So their total all in is going to be about 3,800.
Right, okay.
There's just an awful lot of them here, you know, Jim. Eastham, Dennis, Brewster, you know, even Yarmouth is only 150. Bourne 750, Mashpee, Sandwich. Most communities do not charge a connection fee. You know, that's most. And of the ones that do, it's, you know, in this, you know, couple hundred and, you know, 150, 750, 800, 1335. You know, Falmouth's all in is 575. Orleans is 0. Provincetown's is really 0. Tisbury 300. So most communities are not charging a connection fee as we typically think about it.
Are they making up the difference by charging more for water use?
That's a good question. We can go to the, I'm just going to make it, I think it's easier to kind of, in this case, look at the graph rather than the detail here, because the rate, you have to, at the end of the day, you've got to add it all up and come up with the actual thing. But so here's an annual bill for let me just pull this up again so you can see it. So here's the annual bill, and
For 40,000.
yeah, for 40,000 gallons. 40,000 gallons is like a magic number. Where it comes from is 110 gallons per household per day. And that's sort of like DEP's magic average household water usage. And many communities' rates, including our own, are designed around that $40,000 average consumption per year. So ours is, you know, we've got 20,000 for 6 months and 20,000 for 6 months. So, you know, our billing structure is built around a 40,000 gallon per year consumption. So to try to look at all the communities on an apples to apples basis, there's, you know, I would say the bulk of the bills are between about $200. If you look at, say, Yarmouth and Dennis, they're in the kind of the lower end. And then Barnstable and P-Town are kind of toward the higher end at, you know, $350 to $400. So if you really look at it, it's around $200 to $350 is pretty much the typical annual bill for a water consumer on the Cape. And I think in answer to your question, Catherine, there's really not a difference between the ones that charge connection fees and don't. You know, they're really not. You know, Barnstable is one that does have a high connection fee, and they also have very high rates. They're at the 378. You know, Chatham had virtually nothing. Eastham has 0. Dennis, Yarmouth have 0. I think Bourne was close to 0. So the ones that aren't really charging much are also not charging a lot for water either.
So how can they afford all this?
More people connected to the system.
And are they, I would assume that some of the costs are built into their tax structure.
Yes. And that I have no.
That we don't have, right?
That we don't have. We have no idea how much, you know, the taxpayers are basically subsidizing the water rates. And,
Which,
you know,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, in the case of Wellfleet, this $305.20, that assumes our new water rates. Okay, right. So that's based on our brand new proposed water rates. And, you know, kind of puts us like right smack in the middle of other communities for water rates.
Mm-hmm.
But it also assumes that the town is going to be paying the debt service,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if the town isn't paying the debt service, you have to increase water rates even more to collect debt service as well.
Do you have any data on the proportion of residents in each of these towns who do have town water?
No, I don't have it specifically, but what I know off the top of my head is, Provincetown is probably 40 to 50%. Barnstable is probably close to 80 or 90%. Orleans is probably 50. Falmouth is probably close to 80 or 90. I think Chatham, I don't know how much of the entire town, but in Chatham, if the water line runs in front of you, you must connect.
Yeah, well, that's the good way, right?
Eastham, I don't know what their participation rate is right now, but theirs is very low also, kind of like ours, which is why they don't have I talked to the woman who's she's the water, they have staff. So basically she's the equivalent of the water manager, but she's like a DPW equivalent position in Eastham. And she's very nervous about them getting enough connections. They're really pushing hard to get connections, which is why they're not charging anything for the connection.
Mm.
And they're at around 278 for their rate structure on 40,000 gallons. And Eastham, again, there's a town where the town is picking up the entire cost of debt service.
Through their taxes, right?
Right.
Mm.
And many, I don't have the exact data, but many communities are doing that. That's not unusual.
Mm. Whoa, this is a complicated issue. Wow.
Welcome to the Board of Water Commissioners.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel like I'm way over my depth.
Well, to simplify it, I think, again, the organizing principle here is that we need a certain amount of money for operating the system. And we have X number of customers, and those customers have to be charged whatever it costs to run the system. And that's where that $305 comes from. In most of the communities, I'm sure it's the same thing. They're looking at, how much revenue do we need to bring in to cover operating expenses? So that's where the variation is in rates for the most part. There may be some variation that's associated with trying to build rainy day funds or, build a capital reserve or build an operating reserve, for example, what we're facing, you got to change out all the meters. How are you going to do that? Those are kind of the decisions that we're making. I mean, what Doug proposed for us at $305.20 for an annual bill for a customer doesn't really build in much in terms of, of an operating cushion. It does, primarily what it's doing is bringing down the amount of money that the town has to pay to cover our deficit in operating expense. So we're still at a deficit, even with these rates. We're still at a deficit as far as operating expense. So, in reality, the town, this proposed structure would be covering the debt service plus some of the operating expense of the water system.
Huh.
And it does get better if we get more customers. That is where the rubber meets the road. If we can get our participation rate, well, for example, we've got two or three really big prospects right now. The Harborside Village. If we added those 80 customers or so, that's a significant amount of new revenue. With the 95 Lawrence Road project, there's another, 60 potential new customers. I think if, if we make a conscientious decision to, if not largely eliminate the connection fee, we're going to be able to get out there and I think do more marketing to try to get people to connect where water already runs.
Well, are we going to start doing, what's the term? Is it abatement where if it goes by your door, you automatically have to join? Are we going to do those for these two new sites?
Well, I think that's an issue that's going to have to be brought in front of, the town. Because an abatement is essentially a tax.
It's actually I think what you meant was a betterment fee.
A betterment, that's it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And so the town kind of has two ways to pay for the system. One is through betterment fees. So you basically, if the water line runs in front of your house, you pay a betterment fee. Everybody pays that betterment fee. And what you're basically doing is you're pushing the burden of the entire water system onto those who are, proximate to the system.
Right.
So these betterment fees would be extraordinary for people who have the line running in front of their house. So far, go ahead, Tom.
We have those already.
Well, we have it townwide. We don't have a betterment fee associated with the individual who's got the water line running in front of their house.
You call that price that they pay like $88 or something like that. If the water is available, we have a fee on our fee list.
We don't charge anything to if the water line runs in front of your house, we don't charge that resident anything for the fact that it runs in front of their house. They do pay some through taxes because they're subsidizing the water system. But the only people that are paying anything that I think you're thinking about, Tom, are the ones who have who took advantage of paying the $6,000 a while back with the intention of connecting. So they paid their connection. They were paying their connection fee.
I saw something in there where there was a curb stop in front of your house. You had it.
No, we don't. If somebody just has a curb stop, they don't get billed anything. Not unless they've signed a contract to say they want to connect. And then we charge them $6,000. You're exasperated, Jim.
No, I'm thinking, I agree that we need to significantly reduce that fee, whatever we call it, connection fee or whatever, and to encourage people to connect, and then find ways to make the actual cost of that connection less expensive for people as well, whether the town offers a service through DPW or we figure out some way to reduce the connection fee further if in fact the cost of installation exceeds a certain amount, a certain level, because of the distance from the road or other issues related to it. So I just want to say, I think we should agree that reducing that fee is something that we want to do. How much? That's where you and I have some difference of opinion, Kurt. So
yeah. Well, let me. I don't know what the sense of the rest of the board is, but it seems to me I kind of feel like the rate structure that Doug came up with in terms of the amount of revenue that it's designed to collect is okay. I think it puts us right in the middle here as far as, rates around the Cape. So, it does reduce the amount of cross subsidy from the town by $50,000, and it starts to move us in the right direction if we get more customers. So I think it's a reasonable first step. The only thing we might want to look at in a little bit more detail there is how much we want to connect in the customer charge versus how much we want to connect in the water fee.
But going back to that point about, how it compares with other towns, I mean, if you think, like, if you look at Provincetown, for example, the difference between that 40,000 gallons in Wellfleet and the 40,000 gallons in Provincetown is like $125
Yeah.
a year. So if, I mean, and why is that? And that isn't all in usage. I assume it's in a base service fee, correct? For
Yeah,
them?
this is the total, Jim. So it includes both the base service fee and the, and the commodity charge.
Right.
So the water charge plus the base service fee. But keep in mind, in Provincetown imports its water from Truro. It's probably got about the most expensive water connection and well locations of anybody on the Cape. It's it's the most expensive. They're that setup, right, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're pulling from well fields in Truro. So their pipe is running all the way from Truro to be able to service downtown Provincetown. So it's not surprising to me to see water rates that look like that. We certainly don't have that kind of cost structure.
We don't, but I mean, if we're going to take it out of the connection fee, we're going to substantially reduce the connection fee. Where can we build it in elsewhere that we can basically improve our revenues? And is it in the base service fee? I mean, one of the things that we talked about with Doug was the fact that because of the seasonal nature of such a large section of our town, that the base service fee becomes important because it stabilizes the revenues over the course of the year. Because particularly when people are not using their homes in the off season, that the base service fee is critical even for those properties as to ensure that they continue to contribute to the revenue stream.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's whether you collect it in base service fee or in
Right.
commodity fee. You're just shifting. You're going to increase the commodity rates and decrease the base service fee, but you're going to get the same. You're basically going to get the same revenue. So
No, but I think what Jim's saying, though, if that $350 is the average payment, that's not the average payment for people that don't use their house all. Flatten the rate collection. If you included more of the cost of the water in the base fee.
yes, you're right, Tom. You're absolutely right. This is a typical 40,000 gallon per year bill. If you're a seasonal customer, and you only, let's just say you're only here for the summer and you're not a big home, and you're only using that 20,000 gallons, you're going to pay about $150 for the summertime. And then you're going to pay let's just go back up here. Okay, so Wellfleet is 11. So you're going to pay 125
Twice a year.
Yeah, 125 in the base service fee plus the 150. So you're going to be at about 275 if you're a seasonal customer instead of 350. And that's
So,
to your point. That's to your point, Jim. If you're not if we lower the base service fee and increase the water rates, we're going to probably get more upside down with those seasonal because of those seasonal customers.
Where are the base service fees for the other towns?
So these are the fees for other towns. I can kind of do a quick glance through those.
But is there, those are the actual water usage rates, correct?
This is both. So I have the service fee and the water fees.
The way they do a lot of commodities besides water. Is that when you buy the annual service, say 40,000 gallons. Whether you use it or not, tough luck.
Right. Yeah. So here's how those compare for other towns. So Sandwich charges $50 and you get your 40,000 gallons. So if you don't use more than 40,000 gallons, you're paying $50.
Right.
It's unbelievable. Mashpee, you get your first 30,000 gallons for $100.
Right.
That's
once a year or twice a year?
That's the year, $100 a year, up to 30,000. And
cheaper than dirt.
Yeah, I know. They bill semi-annually, so you're basically billed $50 every 6 months, as long as you don't use more than 15,000 gallons in either of those two periods. Amazing, huh? Bourne is $64 flat fee per year, and they charge a flat fee of $275 per 1,000 gallons for all usage for all customers. Doesn't matter where you're commercial, residential, they have no blocks at all. It's a flat $275. Looking at Yarmouth here, they charge $26 a quarter or $84 a year. And then, their water usage rates are much higher than what we've got than what Doug had suggested. And in Yarmouth, they also increase the base service fee depending on the line size. So this is for 5/8 and 3/4. It's $84 a year. If you have a 1-inch line, it's $220 a year. So they do increase the service fee based on the line size. In Dennis, it's $96 a year. And again, these water rates are much higher than ours. So much higher commodity rates and much lower service fee. But Dennis does not have the seasonal kind of nature that we do. We have a big seasonal, shift. Dennis is mainly year-round customers. Chatham, a little bit more seasonal, and their service fee is higher. $130 a year, up to 1 inch, $250 for 1 inch. Chatham's one of the few communities that does have winter and summer rates. Their summer rates are a lot higher than what our proposed rates are, and their winter rates are still higher than what our proposed rates are. Eastham, $96 a year for 5/8 to 3/4. And then as you increase the size, if it's a 1-inch meter, it's a 136, 1.5, it's 172. So the next one up here is Brewster is 108 a year, and much higher water charges. So here's ours at $1.40 for the first 20, and $1.62 for the base service fee. So we do have among the highest base service fees and relatively low first block rate, and then our block rates are, pretty significant after that. relative to other towns. Falmouth is a largely year-round community, and their base service fee is not that different from ours. $124 for a 5/8, $148 for a 3/4, $236 for a 1-inch service. And it's another town it's a flat $468 per 1,000 gallons. Lot higher, that's in between our two blocks, our 20 and 35 block, at 468. Orleans, $216 a year. They also bill quarterly, $54 a quarter. Barnstable, it all depends on the size of the service, from $188 for 5/8, $206 for 3/4. And their usage rates are higher.
Never liked that charge by the sound. Should be involved in the hookups, because the pipe that you shut the valve, it's still zero. It doesn't make any difference on what size the pipe is. Electric to it. It's just trying to work out.
So,
I think Doug's done an okay job for us. I do think that probably the structure he set up does make sense. Because it's going to be, we're going to be getting a lot more from our, we're probably going to get a lot more revenue from our seasonal customers under this structure. With this higher, significantly higher base service fee. Going from 162 to 250 a year.
So, Kurt, what do you think the next step should be for us then?
I feel pretty comfortable with the rate structure he's put together. It's not a lot of money. At $300 a year, our commodity fees are quite reasonable, and I think they're going to be relatively. There is a fair amount of stability in there by having this $250 a year customer service fee. We're going to be collecting the money whether people are using the water or not, and that means that in the off season, when unless people shut their water off, but then they got to pay the disconnect fee.
Right.
So I think it's okay. I don't have any heartburn about that. It's going to, again, reduce the subsidy coming from the town by $50,000. And as we, build more customers, let me just, if we, so for the next, another 142 customers would get us another $50,000 reduction in what we'd be getting, what we'd need from the town.
Guaranteed the one behind the fire barn in the school, aren't we?
Yep. Yeah, that's 60, and then Harborside Village at 80. That'd be, that's about 140. So for just those two customers, it's going to knock another 50,000 off of the amount that would be coming, that would need to be coming from the town. That basically reduces it by, that cuts it in half, right, Jim?
Yes.
So I think that's pretty significant progress.
So,
I agree with that.
So I think if we can put the rates to bed, Jim, then we can spend more time arguing about the connection fee.
no, I'm fine with the rates, and I think that, I think that as part of that discussion, I think we will want to revisit the issue of the unit methodology here for properties such as Harborside and Lawrence Road. So the fact that if we're saying it under this strategy, that a typical property in Wellfleet that's used year round, the average cost on that for service fee and usage fees is somewhere between $300, $350 a year per property.
Yep.
I think that we should expect that would be the same for properties such as, apartments or units at Lawrence Road, and for the individual mobile homes in Harborside. And
Right.
we proposed that to Barry Smith with Harborside, and he didn't seem to think that was going to be a problem. And it's in my mind, it's more equitable.
Yeah, I think every homeowner, every residence, a residence is that 20,000 gallons a year.
Right.
The residence is, so if you have 60 residences, those 60 ought to be paying the 305 a year, the typical 305 a year. And how you get there is by multiplying, if they're master metered, you're multiplying the block by the number of residences so that you don't push them into the higher cost water rates.
Right, exactly.
Right. That's the unit method. Most communities that are doing that, they don't charge an additional customer charge though, because it's like the 300. Well, no, that would be the same thing. They're paying.
The customer charge is
multiplied by the
service.
number of units, right? It's the 200 times the, right. You're right.
And you still only have one.
I didn't catch
Say
that.
again, Tom, you went underwater?
Only one hookup charge though.
Well, that's the debate. I mean, effectively, the customer service charge is like the hookup charge, right?
I mean, you're going to put in a 1-inch line. We're going to say you put in a 1.5-inch line. You're going to charge that price only once.
Right, exactly.
And that goes to the main meter. And then you could calculate our fees off of that. So we're doing a lot less. The landlord is going to have to have all.
I think that, I think one of the issues that comes up with this that we're going to have to also discuss, and that is what constitutes a private residence. I mean, is it a single family home? Is it a duplex? Is it up? How many units would you put on that one service connection and allow to draw water at the base rate, one base rate? So where you wouldn't be multiplying it by the number of units in the property. It would, like for example, we have a potential customer now who wants to install water, and it's a duplex building, and he's saying, I only want to pay for one connection, whatever that may be, and because there's not that many people in the building.
Yeah.
So how do we handle that?
I mean, I kind of think we do the same thing for everybody, which is, you do the unit method and you multiply that. You multiply by the block by the number of residences. So if it's a duplex, that's 2 residential units. If it's a cottage colony with 6 cottages,
It's 6.
it would be 6 units. If it's a 95 Lawrence with 60, whatever, 65 units, it's 65 residential units. I mean, each, Harborside Village is 80, 80 individual units, 80 individual residences. And a residence can be anywhere from, a single person up to, whatever, 10 or 15 household members. But if you're going to have 10 or 15 household members in that particular unit, you're going to use a lot more water. And you're definitely going to get over that 20,000 gallons twice a year number.
So if it's a duplex,
Now, one problem there, I think we haven't talked about. Somebody doesn't pay their bill, we can shut off the water. We're gonna charge these people individually, but you only have, you have the whole system, the trailer park, or you're gonna shut off. You're gonna shut off everybody in the trailer park?
well, they're not paying us directly in case of, that would be, the fees would have to be collected within Harborside, for example. And Harborside would pay one bill, and then they would distribute the cost to each of the households.
Through their association fees.
Right.
Makes sense. I just wanted to make sure though.
Yeah, well, they're one case, and that's why, I kind of, my gut instinct on Harborside Village is that because it's one bill, one meter, and they're on the hook for it, the association's on the hook for it, we don't have to go collect from, 80 individual units, that charging them a $250 a year customer service fee seems kind of, it seems steep to me, because a lot of that is associated with the admin and overhead of collecting and sending out bills, et cetera, et cetera. That's what a customer service fee is. It's for the administration of, of that service. Now, having said that, in the case of 95 Lawrence, I don't know what the situation would be there. I don't know if there'd be an association, or, if that would be, if it's going to be master metered, or if it's going to be, individually metered.
Well, we don't know yet, so.
If it's individually metered, that's going to be very, very expensive.
Well, one of the things that what Doug talked about was utilizing two different base service fees for those properties that are closed during the winter months. It would be, or have not hooked up to the system at this point, would be, say, $100 versus $125 twice a year. So, you could provide some relief that way, I suppose, but it gets complicated then,
Well, it's one thing when we wouldn't be able to do that with probably 95 Lawrence or with Harborside Village, because we wouldn't know. And what if it's half the people are not there and half of them are? It gets administrative.
That's why I think in order to keep it equitable, we have to do it all, across the full spectrum of potential customers.
Right. I just think that once a lot of the communities, I forget which one it was, a bunch of the communities where they have apartment buildings, what they do, Jim, is they cap the service fee at like 10 units. So, if it's they actually wanted to provide the developers an incentive to master meter and to not not do individual connections or individual meters. So they basically said, if you're over, if your complex is less than 10 units, your service fee is 10 times the service fee rate, and after that, it's not times each additional unit. Right. So that's how they gave a break for that type of situation.
It's a break for us.
Yeah, I feel it's huge. And if we could have 95 Lawrence master metered, that's going to save Karen an enormous amount of headaches. I mean, she doesn't want to go chasing after all those people.
By Mr. Meter Reader.
Right.
So, I mean, you could make it, I don't know, 5, 10, something like that. Even at 10, like even if you said it was 10, so if we kept this idea of let's see, 250 times 10. I mean, 250 times 10 units is still $2,500 that you'd be charging for a customer service fee if you capped it at 10 or something like that. But it does provide also some incentive for, for the affordable housing. I mean, what's in that category over 10 units is really affordable housing.
Well, or it could be a motel, it could be,
Well, a motel is commercial, so those rooms wouldn't be considered residences.
but then are they 1 meter? And
They could have 1 meter, but it's 1 meter, one customer service fee, but they're going to get into the very high commodity charges.
well, I think like a property that say is a duplex, then we're talking about, would they pay 2 service fees per billing period?
Well, I say that again, Tom.
That's going to be hard to sell. Affordable housing on your property or something like that, whatever that thing's called. That's going to be hard to sell that they have to buy a whole new service.
Well, no, I think Jim's question was whether they should pay 2 times the base service fee. They could have 1 meter, but should they pay 2 service charges or just 1?
Well, the only reason to pay 2 service charges would be that if they, in order to enjoy the lower rate for the first 20,000 gallons
Right.
for each of the
Yeah.
units.
Yeah. So I'm fine with that. I think up to about 10 units. I think at some number though, you're getting into affordable housing. You're getting into you're out of.
But that I see, that's where I think is a problem with it, Kurt, is.
Yeah, I know. It's a slippery
doesn't-
slope.
Yes, yep, and that's where the equitability issue comes in.
And remember, we got to keep it saleable.
Yeah.
We need
do.
those. We need those customers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing. Jim's pretty comfortable though that that Harborside Village was okay at, something
Yeah.
that looks like,
Well, I think
311.
if we, I mean, the base service fee and that's multiplied by the number of units, I don't have a problem with that. And I don't think that most people would have a problem with that. I think that it's where it comes down to is the connection fee. So if we are able to figure out how to modify the connection fee such that a property that has a residence on it and an affordable unit as well wouldn't necessarily have wouldn't have to pay 2 connection fees, whatever that connection fee is, because they're on 1 meter.
Well, most of the communities, Jim, are handling that though by just cost. So in other words, it's going to be what it's going to be. So it's the amount of trenching. It's the amount of, if you've got 10 meters, you're paying for 10 meters. If you have 1 meter, you're paying for 1 meter.
Right, but if you choose to have separate meters, that's a different thing than it is to have 1 meter like we'll have at Harborside. And then they decide how they're going to divvy up those charges.
Right.
I'm
Have a
realizing,
pro- They shouldn't have a problem at all because they're already doing that with
Right.
I'm realizing that I'm going to need to leave the meeting by 5:30 because we do have that meeting at 7. And so I want to know what we should be planning going forward now.
the well. I think I agree. Is that I'm very comfortable with the new rate. We have to go to the meeting later tonight, and I think we could easily support.
Kateri, do you, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think, the proposed rates, I think we could probably go with. This other issue of this, installation fee and all of that, that is going to be a nightmare because presenting that to the people who paid 6,000, already, and we say we're going to have to drop it, which I think we're going to have to do. That is going to be politically difficult, but not impossible. I mean, it's like that was then, this is now. We've got to, correct what we did wrong or what was done wrong, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be, I don't think there's going to be a lot of heartburn about it. Because, the system is unsustainable unless we get new customers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we agree.
Exactly.
It's just unsustainable. And when you look at what other communities are doing, we're so far out of line with what other communities are doing, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But I mean, we've been discussing this now for over an hour, and, so many issues have come up, and, you clarified a lot of things. Kurt, I don't know how you keep all this straight, Kurt. I give you credit for that. But, one way or another, we're going to have to, I think we should go ahead with the rates as proposed and say, we're going to do this, but we've really got to focus on the other piece.
Right. So can we say that we came to an agreement that we agree with the rate structure?
I would say that.
I would say that.
And I would too.
It's unanimous.
So
I need a motion.
Okay, I move.
I was trying to think of, I think we want to include the concept of.
one thing we accomplished then in this meeting.
Yeah, let's accomplish something.
I'm trying to
So
think of the term.
do I hear a motion
Yeah, I'm
to
trying to,
say,
I'm trying to,
accept the rate structure that Doug
Yeah,
Gardner proposed?
yeah, I was trying to be a little more specific though, Jim, with regard to the two issues about service, what constitutes, I think we need a little bit of around what a residence is and what, the fact that we're going to multiply the block
Okay, yeah.
by the number of residences.
Right. I think
Well,
that's why
That's
we have to,
separate.
That's what we're trying to avoid.
we have to come back. I think we have to come back to that. But I would say let's separate out the rate tiers on this and at least come to an agreement on the rate tiers for the first 20,000 gallons, the next 40,000 up to 60,000 gallons, and the third tier, which is beyond 60,000 gallons.
Okay, so move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and I. Okay, we're agreed. So that's
Yeah.
fine. So now we can put that to bed.
Is that 4-0, Jim?
Pardon?
Is that
Yes,
4-0?
4-0. 4-0.
Okay.
And I think we then need to set ourselves, set another meeting date when we can continue this discussion with the base service fees and what
Connection.
kind of,
Yeah, I think we need to define a residence, and we need to define how we're going to do multi-family locations.
agreed.
Right. Yeah, and we can do that much more easily than the big problem.
Yeah, we're going to deal with multi-families, and we got to deal with connection fees.
Right.
Yeah.
So when do we meet again?
2 weeks.
Okay. Tom, is that okay?
Stay with me.
10th?
That I agree with that. 2 weeks out.
Okay.
And,
Five,
Say
seven.
that-
there is one other thing that that I had on the agenda, and that is the impact of the town's decision to purchase the property, the Maurice's campground property,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
for, and which is primarily for affordable housing. And I think we just need to open that discussion. And one of the reasons why is that there's going to be a committee being formed to kind of review how that process is going to go forward.
No, I
And-
thought, yeah, go ahead. I thought I read that there was nothing really going to progress for 6 years, or am I confused about something?
Well, I think they want to start the planning on it as soon as possible, because there are going to be things that they're going to want to get done in the early years, particularly in terms of development. If in fact that this is going to be used primarily, pretty much for affordable housing, that's a several year process to move that forward. And
Okay.
the meetings are going to start at the end of this week. And
Oh, okay. Yeah.
so I'm just saying that I think we have to put this on the agenda going forward.
I take your point. Yeah, I take your point.
Sounds like we'll be minimally involved.
Well, hopefully.
We had already decided to allow the movie theater to connect to Eastham, and we'd probably have to do something similar to, if they wanted. I don't even know that Maurice's necessarily is going to want or need town water. I mean, they may have perfectly good water out there.
That we don't know yet. So that's part of the analysis that has to be done. Yeah.
They've been surviving for the last 40 or 50 years on their own water supply out there, so they may be just fine.
Just so that we put that, we're going to have that on the agenda going forward. And then there's one other item that I want to put on the agenda for the next meeting, and that is the idea of selling town water to individual residents who want to have it trucked to their properties. People that have problematic water now, and
No opportunity to connect.
Pardon?
Yeah,
And no opportunity to connect.
Right, and no opportunity to connect. Right.
Can DPW handle that?
No, they cannot.
When I've been involved in this before, it's sold to an individual contractor under
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
under whatever regulations the town approves.
Tom, is that something that you would be willing to, at least to talk to me about before a meeting? So, or to this particular resident who's interested in this now? Okay,
Max has a water truck. I don't know, there's a couple of people with water trucks around, but Max definitely does have one. I don't know if it can handle potable water. I know well, it must be, because they're taking seawater and then they're using it for their shellfish.
Right.
And other
They're all
things.
seawater so far, yeah.
Yeah, so they
Well,
should be able to.
what this guy was proposing was that even to find a private contractor who's willing to do the trucking, and that there may be other property owners who are in a similar situation who would want to buy water as well, so that not that the town is going to establish the service or manage it, but that at least that if we would allow something like that to happen, it might be beneficial to other property owners as well.
No, that's an interesting proposition, I think.
It'll be easy enough.
Be a good source of income.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to call you, Tom, and learn if you had experience with that, how that was managed in the past.
Okay, I'll give you what I've got.
What-
Okay,
Hey, Jim, can we do the minutes?
yes, do you have, were they
March,
there?
April 19th minutes. Yeah, I included them.
Yeah, the one correction I would make, I actually participated by phone for about half of that meeting. I don't know whether you want to add that to the attend. I was
Can
having,
can you add that, Karen? We can approve it with the addition.
Okay.
All right. So, any other recommendations on those minutes? I don't have them in front of me, Karen, but I did look at them. Can you remind me who was in the meeting?
it wasn't
I
me.
got it
I know.
down. Okay, it was you, Tom, Kurt, Neil, and Gail.
Okay. And so.
John
and you're gonna-
Apria was there and Brian Smith.
Okay. So it was everybody, and then Kateri joined us for part of it.
Yes, I was there for about half of it. I was having
Okay.
difficulty with the computer.
Right, okay. All right. So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as they will be amended to reflect?
Yeah, I would approve the minutes I move that we approve the minutes of April 12th as amended, the Catherine
19th.
joined.
19th,
19th.
I'm sorry, 19th.
yeah.
Looking at the wrong thing.
And
19th
I
as
second that.
amended.
Okay.
Oh,
Roll call vote, Kateri,
Yes,
Neil, not Neil, Kurt,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye,
and I vote aye as well. Okay. All right.
thank you.
The next meeting then is 2 weeks out, Tuesday afternoon. All right. In the meantime, I will reach out to you, Tom. We can talk. Okay.
okay, thanks, everybody, for all the work you put in,
Thank you.
especially
Do I
you,
hear a
Kurt,
motion
and
to
Jim.
adjourn?
Yeah, so move.
Just I know it's complicated. I just hope it's helping clarifying, at least get us to some decision points.
So I heard a motion to move. Is there a second? Roll call vote, Kateri,
Yes, aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Otherwise, the meeting will be adjourned. Gail, thank you for being with us.
Thank you,
Happy
Gail.
spring.
Happy spring to you too, Gail.
Thank you, Kurt. And Kurt, good job.
So this was a rehearsal because he's going to be going through some of this stuff in an hour, you know.
You better start taking Anison right now before you.
Yeah. We're essentially like one of the first items on the agenda. for the
Yeah,
select board.
yeah.
Okay.
Good.
All right, thank
Okay.
you, folks.
Okay,
Hey,
thank
good.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.